if you are chatting, we can see you, and we want to welcome everybody. I'm going to begin the meeting. I'm not sure why we are. I'm the moderator, but I'm seeing various people showing up. I'm going to do the gallery view for the moment. All right, so I want to greet everyone and thank you for coming to our town hall today, our virtual town hall. We have a number of people here in the Zoom call, and then we are streaming through YouTube live stream. And so we want to welcome all of you as well who will be tuning in through the live stream today. We're so glad that we could do this. I want to take a moment and introduce Dave and I, explain how this virtual town hall came about. And I'd also like to kind of give you the basic format for the day. Dave Kendall and I will be the hosts of this virtual town hall today. Dave, you may know from, he was the host of Kansas's PBS show Sunflower Journeys for over a quarter of a century. He was the executive producer of KTWU PBS station in Topeka until 2000, there he is waving, until 2015, when he retired, and we began our own production company, documentary film company called Prairie Hollow Productions. Dave is a fifth generation Kansan with a farming background, his family background in farming from Morris County. That's where the Prairie part of our name came from. I grew up in a small place called Shaftesbury Hollow, Vermont, and it's just as small as it sounds like. And that's where the Hollow part of our name came from, Prairie Hollow. Growing up in Vermont, we had town halls every year. I think as far as I know, they're still continuing there. And I remember attending those with my mom and dad when I was a little girl. And I remember recognizing just how important it is, watching people coming together to work together to make their communities better year after year. I found that very impactful. I moved to Kansas in the 1980s and I fell in love with it here. I've lived here ever since. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And while Dave and I have never been conveners of a town hall, we both certainly feel like we know and love Kansas and Kansans. So you'll please forgive us if some of this is unpolished. We are not affiliated with any particular organization. We're just doing this on our own as concerned Kansans. As an example of that, you'll notice those of you on the live stream, you're on my YouTube page where my artwork is. I'm an artist and I make botanical prints. And so you're on my art page, but that was the place where we could place this live stream. So this is just, again, concerned Kansans doing what we can. We've asked our friend, Martha Slater-Farrell, to be a co-host with us for this event and help us with some of the technical aspects, which may come up through the day. Martha is in communications, and she's one of the organizers of an event called Kansas Dialogue. Martha, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to make any brief comments?
Sure.
Just so folks know who you are and can place a face.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, Dave and Laura, for doing this. I think it's great. And hello, everybody. Hello, Jerry. I don't know about you, but I have been hunkered down for weeks in this cold weather. I've barely been sticking my foot outside the door, and I've been watching the TV news and have been fretting up one side and down the other and feeling helpless and feeling like I wanted to talk to people and find out how this is what's happening in your lives. My own family, my dear young relative with young kids got one of those fork in the road letters, and I have been just on the outskirts of seeing them. Their lives have been upended. And I know that they're just one of thousands and thousands of stories. So I'm eager to hear yours today. Thanks.
Thank you, Martha. And thank you again for helping us with all the technical stuff. We really appreciate it. You know, we, like you, are just regular Americans who are very worried about what's going on. And this is a time where we do what we can, the best that we can. It may not be very polished, but we'll do what we can do. Let me explain just for a minute how this idea got started and what our format is for the day. As I said, like many of you, we were very concerned, Dave and I, about the overreach of the executive branch of our government since the inauguration. Our country is set up to be three co-equal branches of government. The president appears to have no authority to create a new government agency without the oversight and approval of Congress, nor to employ someone who's not been vetted or security cleared to single-handedly cut off funding for programs Congress has already approved funding for. We are also deeply concerned about the many unqualified cabinet positions our senators have approved and the implications that that will have for our health, safety, and continued funding of our government and our society at large. With these changes and cuts being made without congressional input and approval, we the people can often feel like we have no voice in our country right now, but that is not true. As we can see here today, that's not true. Dave and I, like thousands of you, and I do believe it's thousands, have called Senator Moran's office daily to express our concerns, and we've requested public statements explaining his votes and the apparent support of the executive branch's actions. We've asked him repeatedly to set up a town hall, please, right away to hear from Kansans, but we've heard nothing back. We also wanted to encourage him to oppose some cabinet nominations that were grossly unqualified, but it's too late for that. Dave and I are deeply concerned about what will happen with people like Kash Patel, Mr. Kennedy, Ms. Gabbard, in positions that they absolutely are not qualified to hold. Dave and I have made a formal request through the website, in addition to calling Senator Moran, to ask him to please set up a meeting. Again, we've heard nothing back. We discussed it, and we decided to convene this virtual town hall, whether Senator Moran decided to join us or not. And he chose not to, or he did not respond to us, so we don't know. Time is of the essence, which is why we moved to set this up so quickly. We got this idea start to finish and enacted this within a week. It's been just a little over a week, so we're a little frazzled, and again, it's pretty no frills. We've decided to hold this meeting for two primary reasons. One, we'd like to encourage Senator Moran to oppose the current administration's harmful actions, specifically related to Elon Musk and the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. We also wanted to create a shared public platform for our fellow Kansans to share their concerns and the very real harms that they've experienced as a result of these cuts and policy changes. We think it helps if we all realize that we're not alone. We are in this together. We feel that it is vital to do this with honesty and straight talk, to acknowledge and appreciate what Senator Moran has done. He did stand up a couple of weeks ago and got $350 million of Kansas aid, the US aid released from the docks. We appreciate that. And we'd like to encourage him that we, his constituents, would like him to do so much more to stand up to this harm. We support him and we have his back in doing that. We want him to stand up and do more, and we're behind him. And that's part of what we want to communicate today. We'll help him do this. The main foundation of our meeting is kindness, not just for Senator Moran, but for each other as well. The comments guidelines that we've asked for our speakers today were to be respectful with no profanity or personally insulting content. So with that foundation, we sent out emails to friends, family, posted on invitations on Facebook, asking folks to join and to speak at this virtual town hall. You had two options to be here today. For those who wish to speak at the town hall, everyone that has come today to speak, you were asked to submit a short written statement from us in advance of what you'd like to read today. We've asked that each of those submissions could be read in less than 3 minutes or less. Everyone who submitted within that time frame of 6 p.m. last evening was approved. We didn't disallow anyone to come. Everyone who asked to come was invited and allowed to come. We don't know, just for what it's worth, we didn't curate this meeting. We don't know most of the people who are here in attendance, but you showed up like we did as concerned Kansans. And again, we're very grateful that you were all willing to join us today and to add your voice to this and try to speak to Senator Moran. So this was one option. You could come and be a speaker, or you could come and join as an audience member simply by listening to the speakers. We had somewhere well over 1,000 people sign up or express interest in viewing the live stream, which is available on the YouTube channel called Prairie Hollow Creations. If you're watching, please greet us in the comments section and let us know where you're from, what part of Kansas, or what part of the world. We look forward to seeing that later. Since Senator Moran did not accept our invitation to join us at this meeting and people are directing their questions and comments to him, we decided to have an empty chair here with Senator Moran's name and likeness. We will show this periodically through the meeting. And Dave, if you want to highlight that so they can see that. Let's see if he's finding the spotlight. Some of this was a learning curve for us, as I mentioned. I don't know if he's able to see that or not. Yep, there we go. So this is what we created that you be addressing your remarks to. Senator Moran, at least in a placard. Thank you. As we've said, we're recording this event and we'll send it to Senator Moran, and please ask him to please respond to our concerns. We're also sending the recording or excerpts of it to the national press and media, as well as our local news outlets as well. Dave and I will moderate this virtual town hall. We'll record the events. Dave will provide minimal editing. He'll edit out coughs, glitches in the video, things like that. The main body and contents of people's comments will be kept intact for the full recording, which will be updated and saved to YouTube. Unless someone violates the agreement of basic kindness, if there's any, swearing, threatening, slurs, things like that, those comments will be deleted and the speaker will be removed from the group. Audience members will not at this town hall have an opportunity to speak during the town hall, those of you watching on the live stream. We are allowing the chat section to be enabled and working in Zoom and on the YouTube live stream. We're requesting the same basic kindness in the comment and chat sections for those speakers here at the Zoom, and for those of you on the live stream, please honor that same basic foundation of kindness. Likewise, violators of that will have to be removed. We'd like to keep this kind, respectful, but we can still speak strongly and clearly our truths. People in the Zoom audience can respond with emojis. If you want to get tricky or technical, you can do that. You can look down to the emoji, see the emoji thing. It's just a nice silent way to let the speakers know that you're hearing them. We are so glad that so many people have joined us. We also have people, as I mentioned earlier, from outside of Kansas tuning in. They're interested in what we're doing, and some, I think, are considering doing their own type of virtual town hall in similar ways. So I just wanted to welcome you all from wherever you're tuning in from. You're most welcome here, and we're so glad that you could join us. Dave or I will call on the speakers one by one. They will make their statements and we'll move on to the next speaker. We had several people who submitted remarks but couldn't be here today. In those cases, Dave, Martha, or I will be reading their statements. Dave will offer a few wrap-up remarks at the end of the meeting. This is, as I said, a pretty no-frills event. We simply want to get our concerns conveyed to Senator Moran and to the press as soon as possible. We're hoping, or at least open to the idea, that this gathering may be just the beginning. Let us know by commenting or email if you want to do more of these. We feel that speaking up at times like this is vital in a democracy. I want to thank you again for joining us, and I'll now turn it over to Dave, who will say hello and introduce our first speaker.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I apologize that you may not have been able to see it, Laura, but our rural internet is a little bit choppy right at the moment. Hopefully things will clear up a little bit as time goes on, and it won't be quite so fuzzy and choppy, but that's the nature of things these days in technology. So glad to have everybody joining us. I see there's over 300 people joining the live stream on YouTube already, in addition to this 34 people here that are going to be speaking. So it's a great turnout. It's really gratifying to me to see so many people coming in. I know myself, I'd rather be outside on a day like this doing something, even though it's cold. I would like to be out there, but sometimes there's other things that have to take priority. And this is one of those times where we need to get focused on a challenge at hand and see if we can do something to improve the situation. So anyhow, one thing I wanted to point out, emphasize, as Laura pointed out, I used to be the host of Sunflower Journeys for 27 years on public television in Kansas. And I was also the executive producer at KTWU in Topeka, where I produced public and community affairs programs. But that's been a number of years ago since I left that position, almost 10. And I'm no longer affiliated with public television. So this is just Laura and I doing this. This is not connected to public television or any other organization. I do still watch a lot of public television, and specifically programs like Frontline and the NewsHour on PBS. And it's unfortunate to hear that public broadcasting is one of those things on the chopping block these days, as it has been in the past. But things are a little different now. Um, but one of the things that, if you were watching, if those of you who tune in to watch the News Hour, you may have seen a Kansan on there last week, I think it was, who was addressing this situation, this very topic. And so we're going to start out with him tonight. And Nick, if you're ready to go, I'm turning it over to you. So unmute yourself and jump in.
Thank you, Dave, and Laura and Martha and everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces and some new faces as well. I want to thank everybody that's joining us on YouTube. I'll start off by thanking Senator Moran for his efforts in freeing up the grain that was held up in ports through USAID and getting that moved through the World Food Program to those hungry people all across the world. So I want to thank you for that. Everyone, my name is Nick Lewandowski. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Farmers Union. We're a family farm organization that's been working since 1907 to protect and enhance the economic interests and quality of life for family farmers, ranchers, and their communities. The current federal funding freeze is disrupting critical programs that farmers and ranchers and their communities rely on. Programs designed to strengthen local food systems, support conservation and soil health efforts, and enhance farmers' operations. It's natural for a new administration to examine existing programs. However, the government needs to keep its existing commitments. We've heard many examples from farmers who've invested tens of thousands of dollars into existing projects with the understanding that federal programs would reimburse or support their efforts. Now funding is uncertain and farmers don't have the capital to incorporate these unexpected expenses into their operations. These initiatives are not just about agriculture. They ensure a stable food supply and resilient rural communities for all Americans. Funding for many federal programs remains frozen, despite 2 court orders directing agencies to resume distributing funds. Impacted programs include federally funded research on crops, technical assistance for farmers, and conservation programs farmers use to farm more efficiently and sustainably. Cost share contracts with the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, are not being paid, even after last week's court order. These programs improve the environment and make agriculture more resilient to disasters. Payments for the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities program have been suspended. This includes $3.1 billion for 141 projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on the farm. These programs are nonpartisan and have broad support from farmers and policymakers across both sides of the aisle. We've heard many examples from farmers. Some are uncertain if loan payments will go out for already approved $2.3 million rural drinking water and wastewater infrastructure project. It had stopped payments for the Produce Bucks program that gives folks on food assistance programs matching dollars to buy fresh, local, healthy produce from farms. And here in Kansas, in Northeast Kansas, a farmer received a grant from the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP, for a solar project funded by USDA worth $55,000. The farmer borrowed money from his local bank. That bank loaned him that money, knowing that USDA always holds up their end of the deal. He received notice this week from USDA saying they do not intend to pay out the $55,000 grant so he can pay off his loan. Farmers aren't the only ones affected. The freeze is leaving state and local agencies as well as partner organizations struggling to interpret and implement federal programs. When farmers and rural businesses face instability, Main Street businesses, from equipment dealers to grocery stores, also feel the impact. When the food system is disrupted, everyone pays the price. Delays in farm programs can lead to reduced production, supply chain disruptions, and ultimately higher food costs for consumers. These programs help farmers manage risk and maintain stable operations, ensuring that grocery store shelves stay stocked and food remains affordable for families. Without clear guidance, these organizations can't provide farmers with the information they need to make critical business decisions for the year ahead. While it is customary for a new administration to review funding and policies, agriculture is already facing major economic headwinds. Adding more uncertainty right now only makes it harder for farmers to do what they do best, and that is to feed America and the world. USDA and other agencies must honor their commitments to farmers and rural communities. Clarity and consistency are essential. Farmers don't need more uncertainty. They need stable, reliable programs that allow them to plan, invest, and grow. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for your comments, Nick. We really appreciate you coming to speak for the farmers. This is so devastating to so many populations, but the farmers in particular, I think, are being hard hit right off the bat. Thank you. We're moving right on to Susan. Susan, if you will unmute yourself, you are next.
Okay. Hello. My
Thanks.
name is Susan Peach. I'm from Merriam, Kansas, and I'm here today not just as a fellow Kansan, but as a cancer fighter, a mother, a community member, and a lifelong advocate as a clinical social worker. I'm 60 years old, and I've worked and paid into Social Security disability insurance my entire life. I share my story in the hopes that it resonates with some folks and ignites a sense of urgency within our community. I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and while I fight bravely, my current reality is still challenging. My husband has a master's degree and works as a church worker, earning a modest income, but a decent medical benefits. Together, we're trying to support our family on his salary and my Social Security disability insurance. Despite working as a social worker and having owned my business, I've not made a significant amount of money throughout my lifetime, but I have spent my entire life pouring my time, energy, and skills into the children and families of the state of Kansas and also in Missouri. We've adopted 5 children and supported 2 others as our very own who aged out of the foster care system. We are a forever family, and we're doing this without any state assistance for 4 of our 7 children that we are raising who've joined our family in non-traditional ways. In addition to these guys, we've got 3 biological children. My husband and I have worked hard to provide for our big family. However, with the rising cost of living, and now with my more limited income, we're finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet, though we can be pretty scrappy and creative. What we had never anticipated was a direct and imminent threat to my SSDI benefits as I continue to fight this beast of a cancer. This is not just a concern for me, it's actually a matter of survival for my entire family. I don't understand how Elon Musk and his young cronies are being allowed to tap into the Treasury Department, the Social Security Administration, the IRS, threaten Medicaid. In addition, we have 2 younger children that are adults who are 19 years, or young adults who are 19 years old, and they're both in college, 2 in college, 1 at KU and the other in a trade school. The financial support they receive, besides an academic scholarship, includes a Pell Grant for one of them, and it's crucial. I don't know how to ensure being able to continue to afford both of their educations if we lose that support due to the loss of the Department of Education. In addition, 2 of my children have special education needs that require tailored services through our school district, which is funded largely by the Department of Education. These are the services that enable them to actually succeed in school and eventually become a productive member of society. These unlawful threats to our Social Security Administration and our Department of Education both directly threaten my family's stability and well-being. And I'm here today to implore Senator Moran to stand up for families like ours. We need you to be brave enough to defend us, to uphold the laws that protect our community members, and to ensure that those who have given back to society can continue to do so without fear of the loss of essential resources and support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was very impactful. And I know that your family is not alone in those kinds of concerns with these cuts in SSDI and education special ed funding. Thank you. We're moving right on to Anne. Anne, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Ann Spangler, and I am a retired federal worker from the Kansas City Regional Office with the Department of Health and Human Services. This department is responsible for the Administration for Children and Families, which funds Head Start. And I am particularly dismayed at the characterization of federal workers as a source of waste and fraud, and referring to the federal workforce as part of the swamp that needs to be drained. I would like to provide some clarification. During my time of employment, our sole focus was to ensure federal funds were being spent to support families with young children and to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. When Head Start programs lost sight of that vision, systems and processes were in place, which would result in being defunded. Federal workers were the ones holding Head Start programs accountable. There is pervasive misinformation swirling around media outlets accusing federal workers of perpetrating waste and fraud. In fact, the federal government's workforce has remained largely unchanged in size for over 50 years, even as the U.S. population has grown by 68% and federal funding has quintupled, according to the Brookings Institute. There is also misinformation claiming Head Start has no lasting impact on the lives of children and families. In fact, there are many studies verifying long-term impacts, which include higher high school graduation, less arrests or being charged with a crime, less likely to be unemployed, and less likely to be in poor health. All of these results have positive impacts for our economy and for the common good of our country. Head Start works. I'm concerned that the misguided efforts for government efficiency ignore the benefits and proven outcomes from government programs such as Head Start. What are you doing, Senator Moran, to stop the overreach and firing of federal workers who work for all Americans and ensure the government of the people, by the people, and for the people will not perish from the earth? Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Anne. These are important recognitions we're sharing. We're going to move on to George. George, if you would unmute and share your thoughts here with us and those on streaming.
I'll be happy to do that.
Thank
First
you.
of all, my picture does not show up, but I'm wondering, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. I have a short note to Senator Moran. My impression is that your service as a Kansas senator centers mainly on the well-being of Kansas farmers and ranchers and on Kansas veterans. I am a U.S. Navy veteran of the Korean War era. I am not sure at this point whether you are prepared to fight for the VA when Trump and Musk start going after the funding for the VA as they fire competent nurses, doctors, and medical staff. I can imagine that many doctors and nurses in the VA will start receiving illegal termination letters, which will include a paragraph relating to poor performance, as so many other government employees are receiving. Please tell me, if you are not too frightened of this president, why you and so many other Congress people will not stand up against the illegal actions of this president and his minions. They are demolishing the standards which have made this United States of America a nation to be proud of. Personally, I am still a proud citizen of this nation, but I abhor Trump and his administration and its bullying tactics as they try to turn this beautiful democracy into a Putin oligarchy. As a naval officer serving on 2 different destroyers in the early 1950s, I am ashamed that congressional members are allowing this destruction to our country. And I've signed it as George L. Downing, retired commander in the United States Naval Reserve. And that's my message to Senator Moran.
Thank you very much for sharing with us, George. And of course, thank you for your service to our country. We so appreciate you. And we so appreciate you for coming here today. That message is so important. And we hope Senator Moran will hear it.
You're certainly
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Jackie next. Jackie, if you'd be willing to unmute your microphone, we're going to move right on.
I think am I?
You are on,
Okay.
and we can see you too. Thank you,
Okay.
Jackie.
Well, I'm thankful for the opportunity to hopefully address this to Senator Moran. I am retired from 39 years in a public utility in Kansas. I started working when I was 14, not at the public utility, but I've been paying into Social Security since then. And 3 of my 4 brothers are Vietnam veterans. Senator, I would like to know how you feel personally about the fact that Elon Musk has direct access to Social Security data, the veterans data, our tax data, and who knows what else, other vital information of Kansas citizens. And I want to know what you are going to do about the illegal hacking of our federal government data by Elon Musk. According to Newsweek, New York Times, and Forbes and others, Elon Musk receives $8 million a day in government contracts for his businesses, which places him squarely into a conflict of interest managing any of our government's data or money. He himself is a billionaire. He was not elected by the American people. He has not been vetted through established government protocol, as far as we know. He is making drastic decisions in secrecy, with no congressional oversight. As citizens, we have no recourse against this entirely illegal evasion of our privacy, possible tampering with our Social Security system and other systems. You are our representative, Senator Moran, yet you stand by allowing this outsider and his minions to hack into our data. You are allowing this in full view of every voter in Kansas and the rest of the country and the world. And how do you know what he's going to do with that information? It's being sold. Is it being sold or traded to other countries, to corporations, so they might devise ways to siphon even more of our money for insurance or medical care or any number of other uses that do not benefit us, the rightful owners, recipients of that data and money? Are you going to stop him? How are you going to protect our information and our Social Security and all other sensitive information that in fact belongs to the American people? Not Donald Trump, not Elon Musk, and actually not you either, Senator. You are our representative. You should be held accountable to us, the citizens of Kansas, the citizens of your state. What are you doing about any of this? Or are you in favor of it? Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate hearing from you. Good questions. And I can tell you've got some pretty strong feelings about the situation, as do a lot of us. So now we're moving on to somebody else who has some serious concerns, as you do, so we'll move right on to her. So Diane, if you are ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Hi, my name's Diane Juneau. I am a Kansan by birth and have been a registered Republican for over 40 years, but I am very concerned about the current state of our government and the apparent willingness of Congress to just hand over absolute control to both Trump and Musk. No, I did not vote for Trump, but I do accept the outcome of the election because that is what Americans should do. However, our government was created with specific checks and balances so that no one person could ever have absolute control. What I see happening, though, is that US Republican senators and representatives are just throwing up their hands and allowing the dismantling of vital government entities that have served us well for decades and decades. Do I believe that some areas need adjustments and improvements? Absolutely. But Musk and Trump are clearly not taking time to fully evaluate those entities before cutting them off at the knees. This should be concerning to all Americans. Add to that the fact that unqualified and often disqualified individuals are now being approved by the Senate for key government positions, and all Americans should be worried about that. It is apparent to me that Trump is promoting weak individuals for those positions to only gain more power for himself. Please, Senator Moran, do what we elected you to do. Support Kansans and maintain your legislative control as a United States Senator before you end up losing that power. I will not vote for you again if you neglect those responsibilities and continue to give blanket support to one individual at the expense of your own Kansas constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate hearing from you. And as you pointed out, this is not a partisan issue. It's not Democrats and Republicans and normal divides. So it's good to hear what you have to say about that. Next, we're going to go to Jill. Jill, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and step into the spotlight, let us know what's on your mind.
Thank you. I am Jill Knutson. I am from Wamego, and I am a scientist, specifically a biologist and an educator. United States citizens and our representatives should all be concerned about the war on science. For example, the lack of adequate science education and comprehension is at the heart of the pushback against vaccinations. We're already seeing major measles outbreaks in West Texas amongst a group of unvaccinated people. We're seeing tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas City, something that was almost unheard of in the last 100 years. Personnel cuts in the National Institutes of Health, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Science Foundation all send a strong negative message that scientific research is just not of value to this administration. These organizations have already been running at minimal staffing and funding, and these cuts will send the United States backwards in our knowledge and skills for scientific research. The lack of understanding amongst the general population for the need of science in our daily lives is just staggering. People don't realize that science keeps our water and our air clean. Scientific understanding keeps us healthy and living longer. Science heals us when we do get ill. Science brings back species in peril, like the bald eagle and the grizzly bear from near extinction. Personally, I'm an environmental educator. I see firsthand the need for more science education in the lives of children of Kansas. For example, many of our students lack the basic understanding in how an ecosystem works. They don't realize that energy from the sun powers photosynthesis in plants and that the energy trapped by plants is then transferred to animals. They don't grasp that the loss of an essential member of the food web can result in complete collapse of the system. Kansas is a major thoroughfare along the migratory path of the monarch butterfly. We have noted that the number of butterflies that have been seen during their migration in September has been declining precipitously. We think we might know why their numbers are declining, but we need additional help from science. And because they travel over many states, we need help from federal science rather than individual states. Science will help us save the monarch butterfly from extinction. Science can enable us to save the planet from climate change. Now is not the time to cut funding and personnel involved in research and education. Now is the time to support and encourage our scientists with funding and jobs. We need to support our scientists simply because they can save the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. I so appreciate you coming. I agree with you. I think science is obviously one of the foundations of our society functioning, and hopefully we'll have more respect for it coming back soon. We'd like to move right on and ask Claudia if you would unmute and share your comments with us too, please. Claudia.
Hi, my name is Claudia Volbrock, and I am a retired art teacher from Medicine Lodge, Kansas, way down by the southern border. Today, I'm inquiring whether you, Senator Moran, possess the fortitude and courage necessary to express displeasure in Congress towards Trump and Musk actions, which are plunging the U.S. into chaos while disregarding the Constitution and democratic process. The U.S. is edging closer and closer to our autocratic nationalistic nation due to Trump's criticism, unfounded allegations, and retaliating actions against his enemies and countries that disagree with his policy. I have 3 questions for you, Senator Moran. Why has Congress failed to fulfill its constitutional obligation to uphold the power of the purse, allowing President Trump to unilaterally impound and withhold funds already approved for foreign aid for the poor and the American people, including here in Kansas? Senator Moran, will you back the House of Representatives 947 opposition to Russia's claim on Ukraine's sovereign land? Are you going to endorse Trump's stance that Ukraine's NATO's aspirations were responsible for the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Also, and the last, Senator Moran, will you take measures to ensure Elon Musk is held accountable for his compromising federal government cybersecurity and America's sensitive personal and financial information, bypassing congressional oversight and legal accountability? Kansas needs to know these questions and plus many more. So thank you for letting me talk today.
Claudia, thank you for addressing those questions. We really appreciated. A number of you had comments and a number of you had questions, and I think they are both vital. These are things we do need answer to, and I hope Senator Moran will respond. Thank you again, Claudia. David, if you can unmute, just as a point of clarification, we are only announcing people's first names. If they want to announce their entire name, we're leaving that up to them. So if you want to say who you are and complete and where you live, that's awesome. And if you just want to go with your first name, that's okay too. So David, if you'll come on.
So hello, Senator Moran, and thank you, Laura. That comment would be pertinent to one of the first remarks I wanted to make is that, Senator, there are some people here who are very concerned about this and who know you personally, have talked to you, and they were afraid to put their names on here. And I thought, at least initially, took my name off and then thought, I don't think that's the way we do it in the United States of America. I wanted to also join in with Dave Kendall in saying, background for the senator and for others of you, I taught for 25 years at Cloud County Community College in both communications and broadcasting. And the way media present images and thoughts is very important. It's very crucial. So public broadcasting is a critical part of that, and we should be elevating funding for it, not otherwise. So, Senator, I want to get to the main reason that to my written comments. In Salina, by the way, there are probably 200 people right now on Ohio Street protesting this administration. They couldn't be here. But as manifestation of the pain of irresponsible, chaotic actions on the part of this administration, we know personally here a friend of ours who happens to be Black and a woman and a veteran, no less. and I know you have an interest in Veterans Affairs as well. She has been assigned to our state central office of the National Resources Conservation Service for several years. She was hired through a civilian hiring firm for a time, but then within the last year, through hard-earned experience and dedication, was fully appointed to federal employment status. However, that status was probationary, even though she actually had over 3 years of service and was well established. She has been crushed by the firing. Her life is in a shambles, and the state's farming community has been deprived of her services. That story, her story, is multiplied by thousands across the country. 30,000 at the last that I saw just today. 30,000 people like that. Let that sink in. This chaos has been inflicted through an entity outside the formal congressional process of created agencies, as has been ably pointed out in these presentations. All of us would like to know your ideas about how you will push back actively against that juggernaut. Beyond that, however, what I want to express to you is my concern about your role approving unfit nominees for those who will dictate our lives through the actual recognized federal agencies in the presidential cabinet. Many others here at Salina around the state feel the same. In my case, I've emailed you on at least 5 occasions and called your offices in Manhattan and DC, providing explicit reasons as well as forwarding explicit detailed examinations of these nominees that the president has submitted. I have received no substantive response unless you count your email newsletters. In every case, I've seen no response to these concerns about candidate qualifications, not just from constituents, but many called for by the so-called mainstream press. What your newsletter summaries have in common is the message that you met with them. You talked about issues A, B, C, D, and so on. And in some cases, most cases, you said you got assurances, whatever that means. These accounts were followed by your obligatory statement of support. These are not answers, Jerry. It appears to me that they ignore your oath to the Constitution and, more importantly, to us. If in your view they do not, would you please explain how? I think you owe it to all of us, and clearly you owe it to all of us as our supposed protector to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was beautifully said and so important, every piece. And asking for Senator Moran's clarification is vital. I agree. Thank you. I don't know about you all, but I'm just feeling very, very moved and empowered by listening to all of you from all over. This is just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We're moving on to Manya next. Manya, if you would turn your mic on and your camera and give us your comments, please.
Great. Thank you, Laura. My name is Manya Schmidt, and I'm from Topeka, Kansas. And I have been a healthcare provider in Kansas since 1978. And I can honestly say I've never been so concerned about the citizens of Kansas as I am now. I've contacted Senator Moran, your office, on numerous occasions, only ever getting voicemail, asking you to consider a non-confirmation vote on many of Trump's nominees, specifically RFK Jr., and to take a serious look at legislation that would adversely affect the healthcare of Kansans. Firstly, RFK Jr., first and foremost, is not a physician or a healthcare provider of any sort, and is an outspoken opponent of vaccines. In the midst of a brutal flu season that is still raging, media campaigns for flu vaccines were halted. Tell me, does this make any sense to you? Additionally, why does he think he has the right to interfere in the healthcare of Americans by, quote, studying the use of antidepressants, antipsychotics, and obesity meds in children? These meds are used in specific treatment plans that have proven safe over many years of use and have been substantiated by sound research. 3, also, with a growing measles outbreak in Texas, he is adamant about taking a look at the childhood vaccine schedule. Early in the 20th century, measles was unheard of, but now it's coming back. The vaccine schedule for children has grown. There are more vaccines now than when we were all young,
but it's been based on sound research on disease prevalence and prevention through regular and systematic administration of vaccines at certain intervals in childhood. Are you in agreement with these ludicrous assertions by a man with no medical training, who is a former drug addict and has hung his hat only on his family name? Cuts to Medicare and inadvertently Medicaid and inadvertently to Medicare will affect the most vulnerable of Kansans, the elderly, children in foster care, adults and children with disabilities, not to mention the nursing home industry, rural hospitals, and clinics who depend on Medicare and Medicaid for reimbursement. Those are the Kansans you speak of with such familiarity and caring, but are you willing to follow party lines and vote yes on the budget proposal that will result in cuts to these programs? It's unconscionable and does not speak well to your promises to your constituents. I know for a fact that public opinion is important to you in looking forward to the next election cycle. You may have noticed that only after 1 month in office, the president's approval rating is plummeting, and the voting public are questioning with fervor the intentions of his leadership. Is he the leader you want to align with, or are you willing to speak up and speak out to benefit the constituents in your home of Kansas? I'm telling you, Senator Moran, this is the expectation of the Midwesterners you profess to love.
Thank you, Manya. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your thoughts here. And I know you are not alone in the concern about Kennedy's cabinet appointment. We're moving on to Carol. Carol, if you would please unmute and share your thoughts here with us and with the Ustream, YouTube live stream.
Thank you. I'm Carol Williamson from Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a retired STEM educator and a lifelong Kansan. Your staff might recognize me from your voicemail. Senator Moran, you and the Republicans in Congress have assisted President Trump in creating a constitutional crisis because you have not used legislative checks on a lawless president. Instead of insisting that congressionally approved funds be spent, you're allowing the president to ignore the law and dismantle programs. You need to stand up to the president. Kansans have been calling you, but you are ignoring us. You've not spoken out about the pardoning of January 6 felons who now live among us. You've not spoken out about the egregious termination of government employees, including right here in Lawrence, a third of Haskell University employees. You voted to confirm a truly awful and dangerous cabinet of Trump loyalists. You're a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, yet you still confirmed Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence, even though she defends Trump's relationship with Putin and other autocrats. You've not spoken out about Trump's lies about Ukraine and his undermining of Ukraine's right to defend their country, nor have you spoken out against Trump's undermining of our NATO alliance. As a member of the Veteran Affairs Committee, do you remember why my dad and other Kansans served in the military to defend our country? You've not stopped the wholesale dismantling of the government by the unelected and unqualified Trump comrade billionaire fascist Elon Musk, including his access to Treasury Department and IRS data. Have you ever wondered what you would have done if you'd been in Germany when Hitler destroyed Germany's democracy, directed the Holocaust, and brought the world into war? You need to do your job as senator and enforce legislative checks over an autocratic president who's unlawfully tearing apart our country for his own power and financial gain and for retribution against his enemies. Just because Trump said he would cause this chaos and people still elected him doesn't mean you aren't responsible to stop Trump's lawless and unconstitutional acts. You have a constitutional duty as a member of Congress to control an unlawful president. especially since you confirm Supreme Court justices and lower court judges who will not. You need to be accountable to Kansans and to your oath of office. You need to help us save our country. Will you speak up, Senator Moran?
Thank you so much, Carol. That was somebody just said in the comments, that was amazing. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Whew. We're moving on to Annette next, please. So Annette, if you can unmute and share with us with live stream and with Senator Moran in absentia, and hopefully he'll respond to us after he hears these comments. I think he should.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Annette Box. I am an English as a second language teacher in Johnson County, Kansas. Senator Moran, I understand that you and your colleagues pulled an all-nighter this week to pass a $340 billion resolution to help fund the Trump mass deportation and border security agenda. I saw comments from Roger Marshall, but not from you. What are your views on Trump's mass deportation agenda? Do you believe that the majority of the people who enter our country illegally came here to commit crimes and steal from the government programs, as Trump has stated again and again at his rallies? Or can you acknowledge that people who left their homes and made often dangerous treks to get here did so out of desperation and the hope of having some chance of securing a better life for themselves and their families? Is it your view that all undocumented immigrants should be deported no matter what the circumstances? Should we deport entire families if there is one undocumented individual within it? Are you in favor of sending undocumented Americans to Guantanamo Bay and other detention facilities? And are you in favor of using our tax dollars to pay for these detention facilities? Are there industries in Kansas that rely heavily on immigration labor? How would these industries be affected by a mass deportation? What effect will mass deportation have on our country? We, the people of Kansas, know that immigration reform is necessary and way overdue, but the majority of us are not on board with cruel and inhumane treatment of people who simply want a chance of a better life for their families. Can we count on you to push back on cruel and inhumane treatment of undocumented Americans and work across the aisle on immigration reform, which includes pathways to citizenship? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Yeah, the situation with undocumented Americans, as you say, is one of the main ones that's concerning a lot of people here. And moving on to the next topic, I believe it's from Jean, who is not able to read this herself. So I believe Laura is going to read this. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct, Dave. We had a couple of people who couldn't be here today and did submit their comments. And as I mentioned earlier, either Dave, myself, or Martha would be reading those. This is from Jean Younger. She did want me to use her whole name. And I do want to give people a little bit of trigger warning. There are a couple of rather graphic examples from World War II in here. Just if you're sensitive to those things, be forewarned, you may want to mute this out. Jerry, I am your constituent who has lived and worked in Kansas most of my life, including Hayes, Wichita, Overland Park, and Lawrence. The recent actions taken by Trump, Musk, and Doge, and the Republican senators, including you, acquiescing to these actions are causing significant and detrimental harm to all Kansas residents. Please stand up and work across the aisle with your Democratic counterparts to stop the bleeding and dismantle the harm that has already occurred. Your inaction is costing constituents millions of dollars in both market share, grain markets lost through USAID, contracts lost through the USDA programs, and lost wages, firing of federal employees and jobs reliant on federal contracts. The loss of these markets and incomes will only snowball down to others in communities, causing more jobs lost, more closed businesses, ruined economies, and ultimately, if left unchecked by Congress, the destruction of our democracy. Further, in Trump's enactment of Project 2025 is turning the United States into a modern-day Nazi Germany. How can you in good faith support this? His executive order eliminating trans rights and dictating that only two genders exist has in one brushstroke erased good, hard-working people that are my family and friends. Trump and Musk are trying to create an enemy in the LGBTQ community and immigrants, in everyone that they can hate and blame for their issues. This is not the American way, and it is not the way your constituents think. We are not Nazi Germany. My great uncle helped free Auschwitz concentration camp, and he saw the carnage there that was unspeakable. Kansas' own General Eisenhower stated after visiting an internment camp near Gotha, the visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. In one room, they were piled up 20 or 30 naked men killed by starvation. George Patton would not even enter that room. Is that what you want our America to become? Trump's promises during his campaign of cheaper eggs and gas and a better economy were lies. Instead, we are convicted police killers released, aid for food and medicine shut down and not restarted even after court orders are requiring them to do so, individuals securing our cybersecurity interests fired, people securing our nuclear energy interests are fired, COVID, tuberculosis, and measles on the rise, and no information on these diseases because Trump has fired the people in charge of even tracking the most serious one at this point, which is bird flu. Is this the world you want your family and your constituents to live in? Jerry, please join the Democrats and start preventing further damage. Start by voting against any more of Trump's nominees and then vote no to the SAVE Act. SAVE is an attempt to exclude millions of women and men from voting simply due to name changes. SAVE is not the answer. It will only further the path to modern-day Nazi Germany in the US. But if you work with the Dems across the aisle, you can stop this. And you are not alone. As our senator, you are a member of a co-equal branch of government. Please, we hired you, not Trump and Musk, to legislate and fund programs. Stop advocating your responsibility to them and work on behalf of the constituents that hired you. Be brave, be strong, and join the Dems in Congress to fight back to save our country. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for reading that, Laura. And again, that was written by Gene Younger. And next, we're moving on to Joanne. Joanne, you want to unmute yourself and tell us what's on your mind?
Well, hello, everybody. Joanne Gartner here. I am in Salina, the crossroads of America, and I just have a few thoughts for Senator Moran. Growing up in Hayes, my mom and dad, Sally and Verlene, enjoyed square dancing with your parents. My dad always spoke highly of you, Jerry. He felt that you were someone he could talk to and knew that you would hear him out. Those conversations weren't always pretty, Dad would say, but Jerry always listened. My dad has been gone for 10 years now. He was able to enjoy a long retirement and appreciated your attendance at his 70th birthday party. But now I wonder what my dad and your dad are up there talking about. I'm finally at an age when I am able to take my Social Security payments, and later this year I will be Medicare eligible. These are the benefit of paying into a system mandated by our government to make sure Americans had something to fall back on in our golden years. I have paid into these programs for 50 years. I started at age 15 working for my dad at a Dillon's grocery store in Hayes. As I sit here today, in February of 2025, I am no longer assured that my money will come back to me in the form of Medicare and Social Security. I have heard for years that Republicans want to end these crucial safety nets that I have contributed to my entire working life. I didn't ask you to do this for me. I had no choice. You took money out of my paycheck every time I got paid. I have been fortunate to have good jobs over the years so that I can retire now to pursue the many plans that I've made over the years. And you know that this money is mine. It does not belong to Donald Trump and Elon Musk to do whatever they want with my money. So don't let them steal my money from me. As you know, these safety nets are critical to so many Americans. As a registered dietitian, I have worked in nursing homes and small and large hospitals since 1992. You know that the state of Kansas has voted no to Medicaid expansion many times. If Medicaid gets defunded on the federal level, it will cripple the healthcare centers for older Americans. Most, if not all, small hospitals will close. Same goes for nursing homes. I see how these elders need Medicare and Medicaid. It is vital that we keep our promise to care for them as we promised. Also, I retired from the VA 2 years ago. I spent my time counseling veterans on nutrition and how to take care of themselves. Many of my veterans needed SNAP benefits to survive. Those veterans deserve our best care, and the programs that are being slashed will hurt them as well. There are ways to make changes and to streamline our federal government, but Elon Musk and his chainsaw are not that process. Please don't end Medicaid and Medicare. Please keep SNAP benefits, WIC, Head Start, school lunches. There are so many Americans, so many Kansans desperately in need of these social safety nets. Congress has had decades to try to revamp these programs and make new laws so that people don't take advantage of them. But you failed. Unless the Republican Party begins to fight for the people you're elected to represent, this country is going to be plunged into a nightmare that no one would have fathomed. Please do the right thing. My dad expected this. I'm sure your dad expected this. And I sit here today telling you that I expect this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. We appreciate that. The image of Elon Musk with a chainsaw is something we've been seeing, and he doesn't seem like the kind of guy you'd want doing surgery on you. I can say that much. So now on to Diane. Diane, would you like to unmute yourself and express your thoughts on this? Oh, this was Diane K. Is Diane K not with us? I guess Diane isn't here at the moment, so we'll move on. And the next one then we're going to go to is to Dr. Glenn. Is Dr. Glenn here? And I'm not sure he is. If you are here, jump in at any moment. Well, so we'll move on to Maynard. Is Maynard here? Looks like Maynard's not here either, unless you're in under a different name. Is that you, Maynard?
Yes, that's
No.
me.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
using my wife's computer, so the camera works.
Okay,
Uh,
go ahead.
Senator Moran, I have a lot of concerns, far too many to cover here. So I'm just going to talk about one. And that's the Elon Musk ravage on our country. Allowing someone such as Elon Musk, who's unvetted, unelected, and not confirmed by elected officials, unlimited access to sensitive personal and national information is a serious breach of the trust placed in those elected officials. Additionally, there's no oversight mechanism to in place and no requirement to substantiate the wild claims that are being made. What actions will you, as a senator, take to remedy this situation and require proof of claims made? Results of these actions over the past month have resulted in terminating many valuable public servants, providing service to farmers, health professionals, and agencies our citizens depend on to interact with the government. Elected officials have a responsibility to control this type of indiscriminate action. Please stand up and be counted. And I will thank you in advance for when you do stand up for us. Thank you, Senator Moran.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Maynard. We appreciate it. And I'm sure others are having the same concerns that you've just addressed. So thank you. We're moving right on. We're going to ask Carolyn if you are ready to speak. Carolyn, if you can unmute and make sure your camera is on. We would love to see and hear you. I see you. Go.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Senator Moran. My name is Carolyn Welch. I'm a retired music teacher and choir director, and I used to cross paths with Raba from time to time. My husband and I live in rural Douglas County. Our daughter is a physician at KU Med, and our family is particularly grateful for your support of medical research and your role in helping to create the Cancer Center at KU Med. As the media environment continues to change rapidly, it is difficult for the average citizen to be certain whether what we are seeing and hearing is actually true. However, by nearly all accounts, what has been happening in the White House over the past month clearly seems to be far outside the norm. It appears that Trump is attempting to bypass congressional authority in a multitude of ways. His bullying approach to international relations is dangerous. Pardoning the convicted January 6 participants was a shocking insult to everyone who cares about the rule of law. None of us voted for Elon Musk. His presence in the Oval Office and his unchecked influence has raised serious concerns about the ability of billionaires to buy power, shape public discourse, and manipulate media platforms for their own interests. The optics of Elon and Trump gleefully shredding the federal workforce are grotesque. The process has been cruel and chaotic. Indiscriminately purging the workforce of experienced employees with vast institutional knowledge and expertise is destabilizing to the very functioning of the federal government. Again, it is nigh on impossible for me to fully understand what is actually happening on Capitol Hill, but you are there on the ground in DC, and we really need to hear from you. You have the knowledge, the perspective, the wisdom, and the ability to understand the implications of what is happening. Defending the citizenry from a rogue president is surely not what our congressional leaders signed up for. But if it comes to that, I pray that you will fight hard for us and the preservation of our democracy. Governing is honorable and important, and you have so much to be proud of from your many years of public service. If it falls to Congress to safeguard and restore the integrity of our democracy, please know that you have our full support. I trust that you will stand firm in upholding democratic values and holding them who undermine them accountable. Thank you so much, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Carolyn. Those are very powerful statements, and I know shared by many people here in the group and also watching from our live stream on YouTube. No doubt. We've got over 500 people watching, I hear. So glad to have you all with us today. We're going to move on to Ernie next. Ernie, if you would be willing to unmute your microphone and turn on your camera if possible. And if your camera isn't possible, that's fine. But if you can, that'd be lovely.
Oh, we're good. Senator Moran, my gratitude goes out to Dave Kendall, Laura Mead, and all the contributors for taking the interest and time to express their concern for the state of Kansas, and more so the health of the United States of America. You, Senator Moran, should also thank them for their efforts. I have tried to reach you in the past on matters that I feel parallel human decency, but have received no more than a form letter saying not all that much. I'm a US-born citizen, 75 years of age, retired, a lifelong taxpayer, a volunteer at the University of Kansas Cancer Center. I served in the National Guard, and never in my life have I seen such a departure from the United States I have known. Caring for others and caring for our own basic Christian values seem to be going by the wayside. We can begin with the halting of aid for those that are hungry. Is much of this grain grown in the state of Kansas, a state you promised to represent? I would think yes. Now we have a showman, Musk, marching about a stage in the current CPAC with a chainsaw touting slashing government waste. This isn't a game show. This is about the well-being of my children, your children, and the future of the United States. I fear my Medicare, my Social Security that I funded is next. I know, pretty selfish of me. Dare I mention the stacked deck of the judicial system? So how is it that you wake up one morning and decide this new form of government is what the country and world needs after decades and different administrations following a steady path? Has the NATO alliance been a waste? Have those that secured Europe in World War II been for naught? According to the Department of Defense, over 407,000 men died for that cause. And they are heroes, not suckers. Again, that's 407,000 dead. I find it obvious that our government is being gutted as a matter of extremist ideology at the hands of few and no voice from our representatives. This is far from incremental change and a dangerous path to take for our well-being. I honestly doubt those that cast their vote for the current administration after repeated warnings had any idea what would play out. Your voice is needed now more than ever. Your legacy will be written into this chapter of American history. It's up to you to determine how that will read. Our national values are under assault. Our Constitution is under assault. You were sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ernie Block.
Thanks, Ernie. Appreciate your thoughts on that, and I appreciate your acknowledging Laura and I at the beginning of your statement, and all the rest of the folks here who are joining in and sharing your thoughts. I think this is being a pretty productive session, and as Laura said, there are 500 people watching live on YouTube. We're going to be editing this and putting it up afterwards too, and I think many more people are going to be hearing from us. Hopefully it will make a difference. So next we're going on to Anda. Anda, would you like to unmute and share what you've written?
Sure. Hello, everybody. And Senator Moran, my name is Anda Arms. I currently serve as a social work therapist and work with foster children here in the state of Kansas. I also served for 20 years as a director and an educator at 4 different U.S. military installations where I taught active duty soldiers, veterans, DOD civilians, with 13 of those years out at Fort Riley, Kansas. Trump has endorsed 880 billion cuts to Medicaid. That directly impacts 3,966 foster children and their families. The Medicaid cuts will limit these children's ages newborn to 18 years old to access mental health services that include individual and family therapy, substance use services, psychiatric medications, and psychiatric residential facilities. These health services help protect and reduce threats to suicide, substance use, homelessness, truancy and protective medications such as ADHD medications, anti-anxiety, antidepressants, sleep medications for night terrors, and antipsychotics for children with severe behavioral and intellectual disabilities. These children need medications to not only function at school, but also day-to-day life skill functioning. Secondly, banning gender-affirming care impacts our Kansas youth under the age of 18, in which these populations have a 46% increased vulnerability to suicide without gender-affirming care. Lack of gender-affirming care can exacerbate mental health issues that contribute to increased homelessness, increased truancy, increased substance use, discrimination, bullying, and early death. Denying these young people mental health services and gender-affirming care is writing their death sentence. I ask you to fight for the rights of my young children, my young clients, excuse me. Their basic human rights, I assume, are not dissimilar to the wishes you have for your children and your grandchildren to be well, happy, safe, and at peace. The buck can stop here. We support you to stand for justice, for the well-being of our Kansas children, our veterans, and our future. Thank you for hearing our concerns, Senator Moran, our public servant.
Thank you, Anda. I know you feel very deeply about this and the impact it's having, the human impact this is having. And you've just touched upon a portion of it. And that's what I think upset so many people. So that's why we're here today. Philip, are you ready to come forth and share your thoughts on this?
I am. Good afternoon. This is Philip Nell speaking from Manhattan, Kansas, which has been my home for 25 years now. Thanks to Dave and Laura for organizing this. And thanks, of course, to the photograph of Senator Moran taped to an empty chair for joining our town hall today. We appreciate your time. So we're entering the fourth week of Elon Musk's administrative coup. And my main question today is, when will you, Senator Moran, be standing up for our democracy? When will you be upholding your oath of office? Because, as has been pointed out here today by a number of speakers, with no understanding of how government works, Musk and his team are destroying systems that keep us safe. Firing air traffic controllers, firing people trying to contain bird flu, firing National Nuclear Security Agency people who secure nuclear weapons. Now that USAID has been shut down, how many people have died? And how many will die? Not just abroad, but here. USAID monitors and contains disease outbreaks around the world, which prevents those diseases from reaching us here in Kansas. Or it used to. Musk's recklessness is profoundly dangerous. Destruction is not efficiency. I would hope that you'd know the difference between destruction and efficiency, and for that matter, between legal and illegal. Because Elon Musk's destruction of our government is also illegal. Elon Musk does not have the power of the purse. Congress, which includes the Senate, where you work, Congress has the power of the purse. Or it used to. So why has the legislative branch of government, your branch of government, why has it ceded all its power to the executive branch? Indeed, to an unelected South African billionaire who is now functioning effectively as our executive branch. Where's your patriotism, Senator Moran? For that matter, where's your spine? In April, I will need to fly for business. If any of those planes crash, I hope that you, Senator Moran, can live with having another death, my death, on your conscience. Because you and all who stand by while Musk destroys our government will be responsible. Fascism is here, Senator, and you are fiddling while America burns. So stop fiddling. Stop Musk's coup. Stand up for democracy. Thank you again for your time today.
Thanks, Philip. Yeah, I think a lot of people are nervous these days as they're cutting back the force at the FAA and various other government agencies that play a vital role in keeping us all safe. And I think we have valid concerns. Muriel, are you ready to go? Go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll move on to you.
Yes, thank you. As a constituent, I have had contact with your office in the past through Friends Committee on National Legislation, and I have observed that you have shown political courage in some instances. As your constituent, I wonder why your office has not reacted to the cutting of federal government programs that were enacted by a bipartisan Congress. What has happened to constitutionally mandated checks and balances? If the executive branch takes it upon itself to discard legislation which it dislikes without due process, focusing on one specific program, USAID, created by Congress, has served as a lifeline to countries all over the world in matters of health, education, food aid, economic development, and peace building. The sudden withdrawal of these funds and dismissal of its workers promises to have devastating and far-reaching effects. This aid works two ways. It provides life-giving material, personnel, and education, and it solidifies the standing of the United States, existing as it does in relationship with the rest of the world. The international goodwill promoted by this program is immeasurable. Calling it a waste of money is missing the point, which is the impact of a powerful country creating a friend and ally while giving life-saving assistance. On the home front, while life-giving programs providing food and healthcare services for millions of people are under threat, our budget priorities are called into question. If we are truly a society which cares for the least advantaged among us, then cutting these life-giving programs is a serious mistake. And if we value our international reputation and care about the strength of a stable and just world order, then we must support the reinstatement of USAID. At this moment, the role that Congress plays will determine whether we as a country choose to follow the Constitution, establishing three equally powerful branches of government, or abandon it in favor of a dominant executive branch. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you, Muriel. I think you made a good point about the role that programs like USAID plays in supporting our country, even as we help people abroad. They refer to it as soft power, and it's a way that we can generate goodwill that will help us out with people around the world at the same time as we were helping starving people and survive in their own desperate situations. So cuts to USAID, I think, are very unwise from my perspective. So next we go on to Ken. Ken, are you ready to step in? And
I'm ready.
All right, thanks. Go ahead.
Hi, Senator Moran. My name's Ken Jansen. I'm from Olathe, Kansas. Your staff will recognize that sentence. Senator Moran, where are you? We miss you. It's rare to reach a live person at your office. I have left literally hundreds of messages over the last 14 years or so. Never one callback. I've received exactly 3 generic written responses from you. You voted for Kash Patel. Besides being loyal to Trump, why did you do that? What good does Patel do for Kansas? What good does Patel do for the U.S.? Who do you serve? You voted for Tulsi Gabbard. Besides being loyal to Trump, why did you do that? How does that serve Kansas? How does that vote help the U.S.? Who do you serve? You voted for all of Trump's unqualified cabinet nominees. Only Rubio was qualified for his job. Bondi accepted an unsolicited and illegal donation from one of Trump's charities. She declined to prosecute Trump's fake university. She sold out her Florida constituents for 25 grand. Now she is Attorney General. You voted for her. Who do you serve? There are small farmers throughout Kansas. Trump has caused horrible financial hardship on them in his first administration through his tariffs. Then the federal government bailed some farmers out. Somehow, Trump was perceived as a savior by the farmers instead of the idiot who caused the problem in the first place, because Trump cannot understand the consequences of his own actions. I believe you are smarter than that. I believe you understand how it all worked out. So in my opinion, you should have been fighting against the second Trump administration because he will do it again. But you didn't. Who do you serve? Because it's happening again. Chartering ASID hurts our Kansas farmers and our state's economy. You should be on TV shouting about saving USAID, even if it's only for Kansas economics and not for the great results and lives saved by our aid. In a Thursday New York Times article, they write about Christians from Iran who immigrated here. They have been flown to Panama and then will be flown to Iran and killed. Converting to Christianity is a capital offense in Iran. ICE has mandatory quotas of brown people, let's be just de facto about that, to arrest every day. They fly them to our concentration camp at Gitmo. They keep our hands clean. Trump has outsourced the killing of other countries like Iran and Afghanistan. Where is your oversight? Why are you not speaking up? DOGE is not about government efficiency, but about government elimination. Your job is to put checks and balances on the executive. You are failing. I read Project 2025. I'm not sure you did. This is all spelled out there. Early this morning, the Senate was voting until 5 a.m. The Democrats offered at least 7 amendments that would have helped Kansans. You voted against all of them. There were amendments to stop the tax cuts for the uber wealthy, at least 4 versions with increasing the cap to ridiculous amounts of income level for the cutoff. You voted against all of them. For the last time I ask you, who do you serve? Thank you.
Ken, thank you very much. Your statements are very powerful. And I think your question is a refrain that many of us really resonate to, which is, what is being served here? Who is being served here? And I hope Senator Moran responds to you through this. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We're moving on to Lisa. Lisa, if you would be willing to tune in here, turn your microphone on and your camera if you wish, so we can see you too.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you just fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I am a Kansan. I'm from Northeast Kansas, and I'm a mother of 2. And one of my 2 has a rare genetic syndrome. And she will need Medicaid-funded long-term services and supports for the rest of her life. I want to acknowledge and thank you for standing up for the rights of people with disabilities in the past. And I ask you to do the same now. I am extremely worried about deep cuts to Medicaid already proposed in the House, which could become law this spring if the Senate gets on board with those deep cuts. I've looked closely at the numbers, and there is no way to get to the proposed $850 billion in cuts over the next 10 years without deep cuts to the services and healthcare for people with disabilities like my daughter and many, many others. This funding is already stretched really thin in our state, with an 8 to 10 year wait list for the Medicaid waiver that supports people with intellectual and developmental disability like my daughter. To be clear, this cut is proposed not to reduce the debt or the deficit, but to fund tax cuts that overwhelmingly support the wealthiest Americans and do almost nothing for families like me, for working class and middle class families. In particular, we could see cuts to home and community-based services. And those are currently optional by the states under law, and these services are foundational to keeping disabled people like my daughter in home environments with friends and loved ones. As opposed to being institutionalized, which was the old model, as many of you probably know. So when you couple these proposed cuts with some of the language coming out of the administration, and I'm going to go ahead and put Elon Musk as a member of the administration, no matter how many times they try to say that he's whatever, not an employee, not in charge of Doge or whatever they claim to say. So when you couple these proposed cuts with some of the language coming out of the administration, like Elon Musk's posting of a meme calling people who rely on federal programs like my daughter parasites. When you look at that, it seems pretty clear that we're not really talking about fraud and waste. This is more about an attempt to turn back the clock toward a crueler era where some of our neediest, most vulnerable citizens were seen as unworthy and beneath any real consideration. In fact, almost not even human. So I ask you, Senator, please don't vote for any bill that pulls funding from Medicaid. Please stand up for our most vulnerable citizens like my daughter and many, many others in your state, many of whom are not able to advocate for themselves. So they desperately need you to speak for them in Congress. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lisa. That's very powerful. And I know you speak for so many people that are very dependent for their families and friends and themselves for this aid that is now in jeopardy. And we hope Senator Moran takes this very seriously and listens to our concerns in this regard. You shared beautifully. Thank you. Next, we're moving on to comments by Miguel Flores, who could not be here today. So Dave is going to read his comments for him.
Right. We received this from someone who couldn't be here today because he's working. So I said that I would read them for him. So here goes. My name is Miguel. I am the son of a Filipino immigrant on my mother's side and the grandson of a Navy officer on my father's side. I have direct family members who have served in almost every branch of the U.S. military and come from a family that has been proud to serve in this nation's hospitals, local and federal government. 7 years ago, I moved to Kansas. Since coming here, I've worked as a domestic violence awareness advocate, library worker, and trauma educator. Through all my time in Johnson County's schools, juvenile delinquent centers, unhoused shelters, and public libraries, I've had the privilege of seeing this country from the perspective of its most underprivileged members, as well as its most affluent. Over the past month alone, I've been hard at work helping legal immigrants print copies of their identification papers, helping unhoused persons seek resources for shelter during below freezing weather, and contacting local organizations to continue getting resources to those in need. My family knows firsthand the intensity and dehumanizing trauma of living under martial law. All of my grandparents lived through the Japanese invasion of World War II and the later Marcos government, which destroyed family businesses. When one of my grandfathers was a young boy, soldiers kidnapped him and did things to him that he refused to tell any of us about. My mother came to this country out of necessity and out of a deep spiritual faith that things would be better here for her children. It is with this history, with my present day experiences, and with my obligation as an American citizen to speak freely and with conviction that I wish to make my opinions known on the current trajectory of our nation. The current administration is making reckless decisions that will, and already have, actively harm people's lives. They have shown that they do not care about the interests of the people which they serve, and are willing to participate in cruel policymaking that will only increase the financial burden on people's lives. At best, they are participating in unchecked power grabs that could and should be checked by the legislative and judiciary branches of the government. Senator Moran, it is your responsibility as a civil servant to represent the people who have put you in your position to mitigate harm and to pursue justice. Put pressure on the executive branch to abide by the law and due process. What is the history of our nation, if not the defiance of kings? We ask you to represent the people, not oligarchs, to remember that your oath is not to a party, but to the betterment of this country and the ideals for which we claim to stand, the rights to life and liberty for all. And again, those were the words of Miguel Flores. And I appreciate having him provide those to us.
Yes, we're very grateful that people took the time and effort to write their comments down with such care. It really makes an impact, and we're so grateful to have them recorded and documented here. We'd like to move on next to Helen, if Helen is here. I don't see Helen in the list, but maybe. Oh, you are here. Good. I figured you may not have a name that I can discern here. So Helen, if you want to turn your camera on, and I will mute so you can go.
Certainly. My name is Helen Hokinson. I live at 6453 Cernich Road in KCK. And before I begin my planned remarks, I'd like to echo something that David Norland said about people being afraid to reveal their identities. When I initially began calling Senator Moran's office and I got the voicemail or voicemail full, I felt like I wasn't being heard. But when the phone started being answered by a kind young man who would reflect what I said, like he was really listening, and then ask me to spell my last name twice, I became fearful. Spelling your last name for a regime who pledges retaliation against anyone who doesn't pledge loyalty is quite terrifying. So, but here we are. What I originally came to say was that in an email response to my concerns over Elon Musk being appointed to a government oversight committee, Senator Moran says, quote, "Thank you for taking the time to reach out and express your concerns with the Department of Government Efficiency. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, in the most recent fiscal year, the government issued $250 billion of improper payments. This, along with over $36 trillion of national debt and an annual deficit of $2 trillion, is unsustainable. For the sake of our grandchildren, We need to address the waste, fraud, abuse, and incompetence within our federal government. One of President Trump's campaign promises was to address all of this. End of quote. Interesting you mentioned incompetence within our federal government, but while President Trump's campaign promise might have been to address these things, and most people would agree they need to be addressed, it did not include allowing an unelected citizen to cancel any program he didn't personally benefit from, dismantle the agencies that would hold Elon Musk accountable for wrongdoing, increase the national debt by giving tax cuts to the wealthy, and stealing from American citizens by cutting Social Security and Medicare, which we have paid into. Your grandchildren, I'm afraid, Senator Moran, will suffer along with the rest of us. And I would like to conclude by echoing what Carol Williamson said earlier, and that is, please, Senator Moran, do your job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were strong comments, Helen, and I think spot on. I think very clear, and concerns that, again, are shared by many. You can hear these themes and how we're all finding different facets, but certainly overlap in the concerns, these deeply grave concerns that we have about what's going on. And I do want to just speak out, because several of you did speak out, and just thank you for your bravery. Speaking up publicly is scary, and I think you're all brilliant and brave for doing this, and we're so grateful to hear your voices. Thank you. We're moving on next to Meg. Meg, if you are here, I see you, and you're ready to go, so I will mute.
I will tell you, I do better in front of a classroom of 8th graders than I do peers, but here goes. Senator Moran, I am a retired USD 259 teacher who taught students about history around the world and of the United States. I do not claim to be a constitutional scholar, but taught my students how the founding fathers gained their ideas of separation of powers, checks and balances, 3 branches of government, separation of church and state, and the inalienable rights of man from the Enlightenment thinkers. While teaching these concepts, students were stunned that these ideas were not always present throughout history, and how unique we are as a country built by both immigrants who chose to come and those who were forced to come here. We discussed and debated the pros and cons of Jefferson and Madison's words in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution to understand why they fought against tyranny and any attempts of an oligarchy. I tried to instill in them the knowledge that government was established to protect all people, not just the most vocal. We use quotes from the founding fathers as points of discussion. We discussed the importance of voting and contacting our elected officials to ensure their voices and opinions are heard. I emailed you regularly during the first Trump presidency when I had concerns. I received form letters in return touting the party line. However, at least you responded. I have voted for you every time you have run for office, not because I agree with most of your viewpoints, but because you return to the state on a very regular basis to actually talk in person with your constituents. Today doesn't count. And not just to campaign donors. You genuinely care about our veterans who have stood and fought for our country, the Constitution, and our democratic republic. You fight for farmers who are the backbone of our country. With that said, I am extremely concerned with the unconstitutional and illegal acts, orders, and movements of Donald Trump, his Senate-approved secretaries, but mostly the illegal actions of Elon Musk. The number of federal employees whose jobs were lost due to random cuts are dumbfounding. There are over 640,000 veterans working in the federal government. Musk has no elected or government authority to enact such cuts beyond Trump's orders. Congress, not the executive branch, has the power of the purse, but is doing nothing to stop this nonsense. All Americans are aware cuts need to be made, but we expected our elected officials to accomplish this through their congressional powers. However, as a lifelong learner of history, what terrifies me the most is the similarities to Nazi Germany. Even the European countries and our allies no longer trust us. The very idea the United States has the right to take over sovereign countries such as Canada is obscene. We, sir, are not Russia, nor do we want an authoritarian government built just as Vladimir Putin would like. There are so many things which concern me, but until we regain control of the regime Trump is implementing, none of the other items will see change. Senator, as an elected official who has worked with both Democrats and Republicans in the past to find a common ground, you cannot be unaware of the consequences if this coup is not stopped. Therefore, my question for you is, how are you and like-minded Republicans going to step up and stop the carnage before it's too late?
Thank you, Meg. That's a good question. When are they going to step up and do their job as a co-equal branch of government, as we call it? Heather Cox Richardson, a lot of you probably are familiar with her, has mentioned Senate Republicans could stop this anytime they wanted. And as Adam Kinzinger pointed out, they've basically ceded their powers. So that's where we are. So next, we're moving on to Mary Nolan, who I believe is not able to read her own piece. So I think Martha is going to do that for her, right, Martha?
That's right, Dave. Mary Nolan is from Hutchinson. I am deeply concerned about the way Elon Musk has been allowed access to all the information he has been allowed to. It's extremely unsettling that an unelected individual suddenly has the power to see classified and top secret information and can fire and lay off so many employees without anything going through any sort of procedural meetings. My son is an Afghanistan veteran. He has injuries for which he receives benefits. Let me tell you that no amount of money can pay for the price of life-altering injury and loss of life. But to even consider cutting VA benefits or services or reducing the staff that serves these veterans is one of the most unpatriotic and harmful things our government can do. Please do not be a part of this. The Veteran Suicide Hotline literally has saved lives of those who have lived through worse than most of us can imagine. Please do not be a part of discontinuing that service. I have a special needs sister-in-law who depends on Medicaid to help pay her long-term care. Please do not take that away from her. She needs a safe, equipped place to be cared for, and Medicaid will pay for that. As a substitute teacher, I have seen firsthand how our schools here in Hutchinson work tirelessly to provide for the children's needs. The staff, from custodian to principals, are all heroes. They give of themselves financially, physically, and spiritually every day to these children. I would invite you, Senator, to spend some time in each city in Kansas, in a school, to see the extreme efforts these individuals go to make sure the children feel heard, safe, and cared for. I believe you would be amazed, humbled, and most likely ashamed of anyone who would be part of trying to cut any part of their funding. We are the people of Kansas. You are supposed to represent what is in our best interest. Please do that. Please do that. Mary Nolan from Hutchinson.
Thank you, Martha, for reading that. And thanks to Mary for writing it and sending it to us. And now we're moving on to Stephen. Stephen, are you ready to go? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Dave, and Laura for organizing this. So really appreciate that. And I've noticed that the past couple, you read Mary's script, Martha. I think she said that she was a substitute teacher, and Meg, I think said you were an educator, and I have a lot of respect for educators, so I feel good to be and proud to be in good company with all the educators on here. I myself am not one, but a lot of my family members are, and so I just wanted to say thanks. So, as Dave said, my name is Stephen. I'm a lifelong Kansan and constituent in Valley Center, and I just want to say from the outset that seeing this many Kansans come together for this meeting is really encouraging for me personally. That said, Senator Moran, many of us are watching what's happening in Washington, D.C. with fear, anger, and frankly, embarrassment. Fear that firing air traffic controllers mere weeks after a plane crash into the Potomac River could lead to even more devastating consequences. Anger that the president's first instinct after that crash was to immediately place the blame on women, minorities, despite no evidence to support it. Embarrassment for Republican leaders who are literally, figuratively, twisting themselves into pretzels to justify the president's claim that Ukraine started the war against Russia, while at the same time calling President Zelensky a dictator. Moniker, mind you, that Trump refuses himself to use to describe Vladimir Putin. I have a litany of other concerns. Federal workers being fired from their jobs, Elon Musk illegally raiding and shuttering entire departments, a lot of other concerns that other before me had mentioned. My biggest fear by far, though, is the lack of respect this administration has had for the Constitution of the United States. This president and his administration think they're above the law. I think we all see it. They're literally saying the quiet parts out loud. You know, the president's not even insinuating at this point. He's blasting over social media that if he thinks something is in the best interest of the country, if he thinks it is, it's not illegal. Meanwhile, you have his vice president declaring that judges aren't allowed to control the executive branch's power. All disturbing things to me, and hopefully a lot of others. So while I rarely agree with their policies, Senator Moran, I have always considered you to be one of the more reasonable Republican senators in Kansas. And while you recently spoke out against the defending of USAID, which I'll echo some people before me, that is super appreciated. We frankly need you and other Republicans to do more. You've been a senator for 25 years now, and as your constituent for all of those years, I ask that you use that tenure and that clout on something we desperately need. Someone from the right to stand up to this administration when they act outside the bounds of the Constitution. So what I'm really asking is that you remember and abide by the oath you took when you were sworn in as a senator, which was, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Reading his oath kind of choked me up for a minute. Just a sec. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Very powerful. Jolene, if you are ready to comment, we would love to hear from you. Let me see if I can see you, if you can mute your microphone.
Yep, I'm right here.
You right there. I will mute
right
up
next
and
to you.
Go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I really appreciate your efforts to put this together, both of you, Laura and Dave. I just want to say, I cannot believe we are here begging our senator to do what is his job and what is his duty to us. It's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. Okay, there you go. I'm Jolene Grable. I'm a Topeka resident for 33 years. I'm ready to enjoy the freedom of my retirement years, but with social and Medicare threatened, it no longer feels like the land of the free to me. All of a sudden, there's a coup underway at the highest levels of our government, with both chambers of Congress and the Supreme Court already in the pocket of the new president. His ability to stay within the boundaries of our Constitution and still impose his agenda on the American people seemed unlimited. But that would require him to play by the rules of our democracy. He enjoys unprecedented political power, and yet for him it is not enough. This president wants more authority, and he wants it faster than due process and democracy will allow. He seems in search of a kingdom to rule filled with only loyal subjects who don't dare disobey his commands. To that end, he has unleashed a band of unelected tech industry thugs with virtually no government intelligence or practical understanding. Lost my place. Wait a minute. A practical understanding of what it means to serve the public good. And he's given them free rein to rip the agencies of our federal government and our federal civil service to shred. The callousness of their actions reveals an unparalleled disdain for the hardworking people dutifully doing the people's work and a total disregard for the impact of the work they are doing on the lives of ordinary Americans. I believe a good government is one that serves all the people rather than just the president, his cronies, while leaving crumbs for those of us in the masses. I worked in government for many years at both the state and federal level. Like many Kansans who also did that, we understand how government is supposed to work, and we know who it is supposed to serve. I am distressed daily, as are they. We are concerned to our cores about the destruction of our government underway by the Trump administration. One of the best descriptions of what's happening that I've seen came from a Trump voter and a former veteran who was hired in 2014 by the Ag Department's Natural Resources Conservation Service, and he was fired last Friday, the 14th. His statement was this: "There is no civility, no honor, no courage, no consideration for the citizen employee." I think that's pretty impactful coming from a Trump voter. Senator, you must be experiencing these truths firsthand, and I simply don't understand how you can sit by without raising objection. Last week, the White House was talking about radical transparency, which is such a joke because we all know nothing he's doing is transparent. Nothing. In fact, has the White House provided Congress with a detailed inventory of the cuts underway? Have they even provided you, Senator, with an inventory of budget cuts and workforce reductions that impact Kansas? Or are you and your staff relegated to reading executive orders and trying to deduce what they mean for Kansas, just like the rest of us? Senator, I'm grateful to you for what you did on Food for Peace, but so much more is at stake, and we need your voice on all of it. Today, I'm asking you to give your oath of office meaning. Speak up, please, for what you know is just and right. Please do the honorable thing. Kansans will be watching.
Thank you, Jolene. Thank you so much for your powerful comments and speak right to our hearts. I think you're I'm seeing in the comments, many people saying, you know, hear, hear. Yes, exactly. You're echoing many of what your fellow Kansans are feeling in our hearts. So thank you for that. We appreciate that. We'd like to move on to Dot next. If you'd be willing to unmute your microphone, Dot, and jump in here.
Unmuted. I'm ready.
All right, I'll mute up so you can go. Thanks, Dot.
Okay. Good afternoon, Senator Moran and everyone. My name is Dot Neri, and I live in Lawrence. I speak as a retired research professor, a wheelchair user with a disability from birth, and an older adult with severe mobility and other health issues. I speak from my bed in my own home and my own community right now. I'm focusing my remarks on the proposed cuts to programs and services under the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS. First, you may know that the Administration on Community Living under HHS supports people of all ages with disabilities to live where they choose, with the people they choose, and with the ability to participate fully in their communities, which is considered basic quality of life. This includes your neighbor who is aging at home, your cousin with an intellectual and developmental disability who bags your groceries at the local grocery store, your colleague who is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and still works, and you, if you were to sustain a life-altering brain injury or spinal cord injury in a vehicular crash. No one, I repeat, no one wants to live in an institution. The ACL funds critical research and programs that support people with disabilities to live in the community and to reach their highest potential, which can include working and paying taxes. It helps create accessible communities and removes barriers through a nationwide network of independent living centers and Americans with Disabilities Act resource centers so that everyone can participate in and contribute to their communities. Funding cuts to this agency will directly impact the lives of millions of Americans with disabilities. I was invited to the signing ceremony for the ADA on the White House lawn in 1990. It was a great step forward for the disability community. But while the ADA guarantees us rights, the ACL helps to create ongoing change so that we can exercise those rights. Second, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are vital programs in the lives of Americans with disabilities of all ages, children to older adults. They permit people to access healthcare, food, and housing, among other services. Medicaid is the only health coverage program that funds home and community-based services that allow, for example, people with severe mobility limitations to get out of bed in the morning and go to work. These programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, permit people to have the basics to live with dignity and to have the standard of living that Americans expect and deserve. Senator Moran, as my elected representative, I am relying on you. Will you vote against efforts to cut funding for these HHS programs, both through the Department of Governmental Efficiency and in upcoming budget negotiations? Your constituents expect you to advocate for programs that allow us to live full lives in our communities. I've contacted you frequently over the last month on these issues, but never received a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Dot. Really appreciate you adding your voice to the mix here. Very important and relevant concerns about Medicaid and Medicare and all the other social programs that are being hit with a meat cleaver. So next, we're going to go to something that Mary has written, but Mary asked if Laura would read it for her. So we'll go to Laura to do the reading, right, Laura?
That's exactly right. Mary S. has asked me, she lives in Northeast Kansas, and Mary S. sent in these questions that she had for Senator Moran and asked if I would read them for her, and I said that I would. She said she had a question about Medicaid. to the point of what we were just discussing in the aid that's being cut in various ways. 79 million people are enrolled in Medicaid and the CHIP program. The Budget Committee voted to seek at least $880 billion in mandatory cuts. Medicaid is expected to bear most of that cost. At stake are the financial health of thousands of hospitals and community centers, and a huge source of revenue and a huge revenue source to all states. 1 in 4 births, 60% of nursing home costs are paid by Medicare. This cut will affect our most vulnerable citizens. Kansas has experienced the closing of many rural hospitals. As a mental health care professional who has seen many clients who utilize Medicaid, what will occur when they have no access to therapy or medications? 62 hospitals in Kansas are at risk for closing. How will these communities be supported? What is the cost benefit to cutting these services? The next question, Robert Kennedy Jr. has proposed that Black youth on psychiatric medications be sent to government-run farms in order to be taken off medications. He is also recommending wellness farms for adults, where they will be taken off their medications. This is a 16.5% of the population. As a clinician, I have seen many people benefit from medications. 1, where will the government farms be and how would those be funded? 2, research has proven that SSRIs are not addictive. So why was Robert Kennedy Jr. not challenged on this point? 3, many people will not be able to function without their SSRIs. And how will that be provided for? Housing, employment, daycare. We, the people, want to live in freedom, not fear. Please represent us appropriately, Senator Moran. That's from Mary S. in Northeast Kansas.
And thank you for reading Mary's thoughts, Laura. Appreciate it. And thank Mary for writing them and submitting them. So next we go to Tom. Tom, are you ready to jump in? Go ahead and unmute and tell us what's on your mind.
Oh.
Hello, Tom.
Got it.
I see. There you go. You got it? Okay.
Thank
good.
you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today. My name is Senator Moran. My name is Owen Tom Pryor. I'm from Columbus, Kansas. And the question I have for you, when will you stand up for the people of Kansas? I ask, why have Republicans consistently failed to pay down our national debt? You and I had a conversation about this a few years ago when I reminded you that when Bill Clinton left office, he left us with an $800 billion surplus. And you agreed that should have been used to pay down the debt instead of giving it as a tax cut to most Americans, but most of it went to the wealthiest. My grandchildren will be given the awful debt accumulated by this administration and Republicans who now want to cut government without any thought to what will save money. Defense spending has often been singled out as a way to cut expenses. I am a combat Vietnam veteran. I served with the United States Navy from 1965 to 1969. I was a hospital corpsman and spent a good deal of time with the India Company, 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines. But yet budgets were not cut, but now for the Defense Department. But now we've put people in charge of the Defense Department who are supporting taking an axe to everything that moves. This approach will result in large expenses. Why have you not stood up to this administration and his leadership? The people of Kansas expect you to represent us and just say no to him. I ask you, Senator Moran, with a great deal of respect, the time will come when you will have to stand up for us. Now is that time. Thank you, Senator Moran, and thank you everyone here for the outstanding statements that have been made. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service as well. I'm glad you contributed to this. And I think at this point, we've only got one more person, one more speaker that I know of. I saw Diane enter the waiting room a few minutes ago. So Diane, we had you on the list earlier, but you're here now. So if you are ready to go ahead and unmute and we'll go to you, Diane K.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Diane Kennedy. I've lived in Roland Park, Kansas, my whole entire adult life. I'm retired after 42 years with Children's Mercy, working as a pediatric nurse, and then a clinical researcher and faculty with the University of Kansas. I have a few short statements, a question. Under what legal authority can Elon Musk dismantle government entities created by Congress, fire thousands of government employees without process, withhold funds that have been appropriated by Congress, and access the personal data of Americans, especially in light of Elon's massive conflicts of interest? We feel we are living in an unsafe society that has been deliberately created by a corrupt and cruel billionaire and president. Abandoning healthcare research about infectious disease, cancer, vaccines, and neurological disorders is literally obscene. Americans will be hurt. We need the foundational services that our government provides, not huge tax cuts for billionaires. A president must abide by the Constitution. This power grab is terrifying and will affect all Americans, including Republicans. Also, we must support NATO and Ukraine. Ukraine did not start the war with Russia. How absurd. Occupying Gaza with intentions of building a Mideastern Riviera is violating international law. Foreign policy is absurd and shameful. We need our allies. Please, I beg of you, everyone in Congress must speak up to this very corrupt and evil president. Thank you. I would love to hear from you. I email you on a regular basis.
Thank you, Diane. And I believe that is all of the folks. Did I miss anyone? If we did miss anyone, unmute yourself and speak up. And we'll give you a chance to say your piece.
I think we got everyone. I think we did. Yeah.
All right. Well, we moved right along, covered a lot of territory. We've got a lot of testimonials here, and we appreciate you all taking time to join us today and say your piece. And we will be putting this together. I plan to do some minimal editing on the whole thing so that the whole thing is available, just to kind of clean it up a little bit, although I don't know that I need to do a whole lot. And I also will be probably compiling an edited highlight reel kind of some of the more pithy remarks that will be shorter, and perhaps some people will take the time to watch that if they don't want to take the time for the whole thing. And we do have a script available. Somebody asked me about the script, so if everybody's okay to share that, it's another document we might be able to make available. So we will do that, get it together, and we will provide the information to Senator Moran's office. And hopefully someone will get back to us about this, and preferably the senator will do his own video to respond to us and maybe share that somehow. In any event, we really appreciate you all taking your time to share. And it's a difficult time for this country and for the entire world. And I think it's important that people get involved. And I think we, the people, can have an impact on this process at this point, primarily by putting some pressure to encourage our Congress to represent us and make this more of a co-equal branch of government to get things restored, the balance restored. So Laura, what else do we need to say before we shut down?
I love what you just said, Dave, about Senator Moran responding by video. I just like to make that within this one document a formal request. Senator Moran, your constituents have poured our hearts out respectfully, earnestly, strongly about our concerns, our worries, the implications of what's going on. And we would like to hear from you. Please respond to us. And I think Dave's idea is a great one. If you don't have the ability to do a live town hall for whatever reason, can you respond to us in a recording that then we can share with all of these people that took the time and effort to spend their entire sunny day, Saturday, sitting in this meeting to give our remarks to you? Could you please respond to us? We would ask you most earnestly. And I would say, in echoing respectfully what everyone said here, I do think that's part of your job. I do. So we would request that respectfully. Please, if you could respond to us, we would really appreciate hearing your thoughts on this. I do want to take a moment to thank all the people that stuck around on YouTube live stream. It's been a huge number the whole time, and that's just tremendous. And as Dave said, we're going to have this whole thing up on YouTube to watch later. So those of you that didn't get the whole thing, you can see it there. Dave will be editing excerpts that we can offer to the media and the press, and smaller sections, because that will help get the word out. And we would ask all of you watching today, whether you were here or in the live stream, please share this, get this word out. We are not the only people in the country feeling this way. And I think we echoed a lot of sentiments that are carried by many. So let's get the word out. And I want to just most deeply, I'm blown away by the comments of the people that took the time today to speak here. Thank every one of you. And the people that wrote and couldn't come in, thank you for taking the time and care to write those thoughtful statements. I'm just so grateful. And I have to say, my sense of being empowered, and I hope it helps you too feel empowered. We have a voice and we're using our voice. And I think that's what we can do in these times, to speak our truth. So I want to thank you all very much. I'm just so very grateful. And I for one, feel very heartened by hearing from all of you, my fellow Americans and Kansans. Thank you.
I'd ask for those who don't have your cameras on, if you don't mind turning your cameras on for a second here, I'd like to get a group shot that we can share to kind of show our strength in numbers. If you don't want to, that's fine. But as many as possible, I think that would be good. So I'll give you another second to do that. And again, appreciate you all taking part and maybe sticking your neck out a little bit, which sometimes these days it can be a little scary considering how things go. But I think it's important that we all speak up and show ourselves. So thank you. And I'm going to take a group shot right now. And there's another one coming. All right. Thank you. Everybody smile. Well, maybe you don't need to smile. It's not exactly a happy situation, is it? So you don't need to smile.
I think joining together.
Thank you.
Situation. Difficult times.
One other thing, I do want to add a great deal of thanks to our friend Martha Slater Farrell for jumping in to help Laura and I with this, because we definitely needed her help. And Martha, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have anything to say, Martha, at this point?
Yeah, Martha, did you have anything to wrap at this point?
It has been humbling to hear everybody. And thank you for sharing your hearts and your lives with us. And we will spread these comments wide and hope to create more. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, thank you all. Thanks again. I'm going to end the live stream on YouTube now. So we'll thank you all for coming.